Anyway, good morning. Are you guys ready for lecture number 11? So the theme for this week is a call to duty. So what do you understand by a call to duty? What comes to mind when the pastors tell you every day that they were called? Okay, so she thinks it's a service, right? You are called to serve. So our politicians will tell you that they felt the need to step up, the call to duty, to contribute to national development. If you talk to Linda and Lucy and you talk to Fred McVagon-Laurie, would say we came home to serve. So when you look at the military people feel that they are called to serve. They see the need to step up. Politicians, pastors, everybody at a certain point in time or in their lives feel that they have to stand up for something. So today I'm going to use two examples. And obviously the reason why I step up to teach this course is because leadership has served me well. The tools that I learned from my leadership experiences helped me to survive in the jungle of the corporate world. And so long before I conceived a course like this, I was writing about leadership. You can tell from the PDF that you guys have that this course seems to follow, right? I also wrote about two guys who felt they were called to serve. And in the first book called Ultimate Surrender, obviously that guy ended up surrendering to something. He surrendered to something. And then there is one also called Broken. And those two books are very close and personal because they are also based on historical facts. Okay? And that's what I want to discuss with you. I'm sure you all have copies of them. So the first guy that I want to talk about is Dr. Kankam, a very prominent Ghanaian economist, studied abroad and felt the need to come back home and serve. He was called to duty. So Dr. Kankam goes to the US, like most African countries do. Most countries in the world actually do that. They go on these trade missions. So they'll go to Atlanta and try to form a sister city with Atlanta, New York, sister cities. And when they are in these places, they will meet the local political leadership. They will meet the Ghanaian community. So at one of these sessions in Atlanta, this stunning lady walked up to Dr. Kankam and said, "Oh, I'm so excited to hear all the great investment opportunities that you talked about in Ghana. I would really love to come and see it." So Dr. Kankam was very excited. You know, this is a potential investor for Ghana, or for that matter, any other African country. So she comes. One thing led to the other. She decides that she wants to do rice farming because we spend millions of dollars every year importing rice into Ghana. Do you guys know that? Do you know the number? And our local farmers cannot even sell their more quality rice. So there was an excitement that this investment will go a long way to preserve our foreign currency reserves in the country. So the government signs off on the sovereign debt. It basically gave her collateral for $20 million. She goes back to the States. She buys a few agricultural equipment. By the way, this woman doesn't even know if rice grows in the ground or in the air. She has never seen rice farm. So she brings a few equipment to a place in the Volta region called Agyenim-Boateng. And to tell you how serious I am about this, I went there. So that book is based on a true story. I went there and I actually took a video of the agricultural equipment that she bought that were lying in the sun and rusting. And when I find that video, I'll send it to you, about a year ago. And then she went back to Atlanta and bought herself a $1 million mansion in a gated community. Miraculously, she found a husband too. She didn't need one before. And she spends another $1 million on her wedding. You know where that money is coming from, right? True story, facts. Then she goes to her church and donates $1 million to the church. And the pastor was so frightened. He has never seen this much money. He said, "Can we put this on video?" She said, "Sure." They put it on video. And she said, 3 years ago when I was leaving for Africa, I came here and asked this congregation to pray with me. Your prayers and mine have been answered. The Lord has blessed me with multi-millionaire. The video cuts. Then at her wedding, she had 50 pieces of orchestra. After the wedding, she took a 3-week cruise to the Caribbean for $50,000. She bought her husband Armani suits. And there's a watch that I always dream about. It's Constantino Vacheron. It cost $700,000. That was her wedding gift to her husband. So her uncle, who was also an investor in her company, started saying, "Wait a minute. We haven't farmed a single grain of rice yet. And all of a sudden, miraculously, your lifestyle has changed. Nails polished, high heels, piercing the ground angrily, free money from Africa." Then Dr. Kankam finds out that all this were happening because she was also dating the president or somebody up there. So the president's wife, hearing the rumors, called Dr. Kankam's wife to her home. No, she actually drove to her house and gave her a dress down. You know what I mean, right? She blasted her. She said, "You and your husband are so ungrateful. My husband and I have been nothing but good to you guys. And now that your husband is some sort of political power in this country, he gets to import women from abroad for my husband." But Dr. Kankam did not know anything about this. He really didn't know. All he was trying to do was to bring into this country investors. So the First Lady asked her husband to fire him. So before the president could tell him to resign, Mr. Kankam gives him his letter of resignation. He didn't want to be soiled by what was going on. So now the president says, "Kankam, you can't leave right now. We still have so much to do. I need you. This country needs you. We got work to do." So Dr. Kankam now says, "Mr. President, there are more competent people in this country. I return to contribute. I believe I've done my best. Anything beyond this will be unreasonable. I can no longer extend the limits of my generosity. And I appreciate whatever you and the First Lady brought our way. Now it's time to hang the reins." The president is still trying to convince him. He said, "Kankam, we can make this work. We have to leave the women out of this game. We cannot afford to extend personal disagreements into government or governance." He said, "Mr. President, my life is not a game. I joined your government to serve this nation. Then I believe in your moral authority." You heard that word before, right? "You have failed me in this regard." He said, "Kwesi, but you didn't tell me that that woman was your girlfriend." So, diversionary. Say, "Mr. President, she was not my girlfriend. She was a client of this nation. Clients brought into service, to service our nation are not at the disposal of the president's sexual whims. You have compromised the integrity of your office. Okay, Christy, stop being a fool. This is as old as civilization. You are now talking like an American or a European. In this part of the world, no one cares whose skirt gets pulled down. I did not plan this. It just happened. She's obviously a beautiful woman. What did you expect from me? I am just a man. I understand. Just a man. Perhaps a rational man will suffice. You somehow just slipped and fell into her panties, right? That is very creative. I have known you for your intelligence, but I could not have guessed your creativity. Then she goes on, he basically blasts the president. Mr. President, it is not in my character to envy another man. I'm grateful for your good luck, but you have set a bad precedent for those who believe in your moral authority. And then he responds, I never pretended to be a saint. There are no saints here. He said, you have never denied that honor either. Is this about Akos and my wife? No, I've been thinking about leaving for some time now. I have other things I want to do for my life right now. So now he's starting to make him promises. What about another tenure as U.S. ambassador with accreditation to the United Nations? He says, no thanks. So it goes on and on, but the moral of this story is that here is one good man, right? It can come the kind of leader we want for our country in the organizations that we work, that they can talk truth to power, right? Now, so what happened to this lady, right? That's really the story. So when the story broke, this is now what Kankam is addressing with the president. But this lady was in America. She bought 2 Jaguars for $250,000 each, 2 Rolls Royces for $250,000 each, 2 Bentleys for $250,000 each. With your money. Well, as the book continued, it basically said in one part of the world, you can get away with these things, but not everywhere. So she got brought to court. So she was tried. They brought her to trial in the US because the uncle, who couldn't stomach the fact that she had made all that money and not a single grain of rice had grown in Ghana, took her on to court. So now here's the judge. Has the jury reached a verdict? The judge's voice quivered with measured sympathy. It echoed against the pillared courthouse. All waited with breath held up as if for eternity. Yes, Your Honor, the lead juror responded. May the defendant rise and face the juror. Sharon, Lauren Johnson's legs almost caved in. Her dreaded moment had come. She had thought at the beginning of the trial that this whole thing was a farce. She had always believed that her stunning beauty, as confusing as it had been for the Africans, would save her from the gallows. Perhaps the most pleasant-looking people have benefited for centuries from narcissistic society, for the soft spot it always reserved for them. The law had since evolved. Now, even the most beautiful could be made an example of. So now, on the first count of conspiracy to embezzle and embezzling, how does the jury find the defendant? What do you think? Guilty. On the second count of money laundering across international lines, in violation of the Bank Secrecy Act of 1970, how does the jury find the defendant? On the third count of tax evasion, how does the jury find the defendant? Okay. So she went to jail for 15 years. So here are two contradictions. Kankam was called to duty, right? And he stood up to it. And when that duty changed, he quit. And the president tried everything he could to keep him, but he refused. And you should read the whole book. It will make more sense to you. Now, do you think the president was called to duty? There's an army officer here whose commander-in-chief is the president. So I want to make it clear that we're not talking about your president. Yeah? Did you think the president was called to duty? Does he think he was called to duty? No, I'm asking two different questions here. Do you think that president was called to duty? Does the president think he was called to duty? I'm sure the president believes he was called to duty. But we shouldn't think by any means that he was called to duty, because he wasn't serving the interest of this country. Do you know how much $20 million 15 years ago could do in this country? So that's broken. Now let's look at what happened to ultimate surrender. This cover wasn't chosen by accident, right? You see, the glass is shattered. It's broken. The message is our society is broken. We need to fix it. You know, growing up in the 70s and 80s, sometimes I have nostalgia about military rule. Ghana used to be clean. They will whip the shit out of you and you pick stuff up. Now, we are paying the price for democracy. So at what point do you say Rwanda is doing very well and Ghana that is richer is not doing well? It's all around discipline. It's around discipline. So broken was emotionally chosen. This cover was emotionally chosen as a loud cry to the cracks in our society that this education is supposed to help you fix. Every one of you here is a Dr. Kankam or a Sharon or the president or Sharon's uncle. So don't think that these are some isolated people that your life has nothing to do. The essence of this class is, do you have the leadership courage when that leadership is extended to you to do what is right by Ghana or Africa for that matter? Not when it is easy, when the decisions are difficult to make. That's the essence of this class. Okay? So let's look at the next one. So Sharon obviously had aspirations. She came to Africa to make money. And she knows if you flaunt your beauty in this part of the world, the politicians melt. You know, everybody talks about Africa being a jungle. It's a dark continent. But for hundreds of years, in the darkness of Africa, the white man finds the diamonds and the gold. That's quite creative, right? They say there are wars in Liberia. Don't go to Liberia, you get killed. But then the mining companies in Liberia are European companies. It's the power of the mind. It's the power of the mind. If you keep telling your children they are dumb, they'll grow up to be dumb. If you tell Africans that they have nothing of value, they begin to believe it. But this continent supports the world's economy. And it is time for us to all realize that, okay? So that we don't produce people like that old president, okay? So here's a perfect gentleman. Dr. Chenebua, bride, Prempeh graduate, Oxford education. Comes back home. He's a minister. Then he goes on a UN mission for the president. He falls in love with a pretty white woman. I'm sure Dr. Chenebua believes that he was called to duty also, right? Because he said we were in opposition for over 20 years. looking for that opportunity to serve. And when he came back, he didn't have much. In fact, when he tried to marry his wife, who comes from a very prominent family, her parents said, "What is this you are bringing here? You're supposed to bring somebody here that will add onto our money, not a bloodsucker." But when he became a politician, the parents changed. They loved him. He was a favorite son-in-law. Because anytime he came on the motorbikes with a siren. The whole neighborhood knew that Mrs. Chenebua's husband was in the neighborhood. It's money business. Money talks, bullshit walks, right? All of a sudden, he was a cuter son-in-law. How sad. So anyway, the poor woman was here. Dr. Chenebua was having fun in America. And so he invites his mistress to Ghana. And one weekend, they were driving in his nice BMW convertible. I chose BMW for obvious reasons. I love BMWs. Okay, you should know that by now. So as they went up the hill, trying to spend a weekend at Peduasi Lodge. If you have access to the presidency, you have access to everything, okay? So as soon as they got out of Accra, the lady turns around. Of course, the top of the convertible was down, and all she saw was darkness behind her, and up the hill was well lit. So he said, "What's going on here? It's all dark behind us right now." It's like, "Don't worry." He said, "What do you mean, don't worry?" He said, "Well, as you can see, where we are going is lighted." So there's a certain sense of selfishness in this, right? So she kept trying to understand the dynamics of Dumso. And so he tells her, he said, "Listen, we don't go into politics to fix problems." He said, it seems to me, madam, that you don't understand what politics is. He said, politics is a bleeding wound. All we need to do is to bring the bandages to stop the bleeding. And I'll read a few excerpts for you. Then they went up the hill for the weekend. All she saw was peacocks. Of course, there are no peacocks at Peduasi Valley, okay? But I portrayed that in the book to show the extravagance of animals walking, antelopes walking in the backyard. And so she said, "How do you get access to all these as a politician?" And then he says, "You know, there's a reason why we spend millions of dollars trying to get into power. Because all you need to do is to capture that power, and everything else is available for you." So these are our leaders. These are our leaders. These are not isolated people. These are people we elect into office every 4 years. And their view is that if your problems are solved, then you won't need politicians. If your problems are solved, then there are no wounds for them to bandage. There are no promises to be made. There are no promises to be broken. Well, the long and short of the story was that he ended up having a baby with this woman. And like I said previously, in other parts of the world, you get away with a lot of things. In other places, there are consequences. So she sued him. And $10,000, $15,000 every month in child support has to go abroad. Now, we know politicians don't make $10,000 a month on record, officially, at least in this part of the world. So, how was he paying that money? Now, why Chenebua? Because, good people can go wayward too, by the decisions that they make. In our culture, we always hear people say, oh, I did not know that this person was like that. Right? Maybe they were not really bad. They weren't. They just made a mistake. But you are judged based on it. It's extrapolated to say that that is how you are. So leadership judgment is critical. And it's not just the men who are at risk. The women too are at risk. Anytime you are in a leadership position, you are at risk. So Billy Graham, the famous preacher, right, says he has never ever in his 60 years of ministry been in his vehicle with his secretary alone. Did you hear that? For 60 years, he was never in his vehicle with his secretary without somebody else being in that vehicle. Because leaders are vulnerable. Leaders are targets. See, when you see the long train of presidential motorcade, the sirens, part of it is showmanship, but part of it is most of it is for protection. Right? I'll tell you what I do in my office, and my technical assistant is sitting over there. There's no day I don't have people just walk here and say they need to see me. And then my assistant says, what do you need to see him for? And they say, it's personal. So yesterday I gave her a long lecture. I said, if anybody comes here to see me and they don't have an agenda topic and it is personal, tell them to go to my house. I don't do personal business here. So the message to you guys is, you have to be careful. You cannot be careful enough, especially when you are in a leadership position. And I'll tell you another thing that I told my assistant yesterday. If anybody comes here dressed in a very skimpy way, don't let them into my office. And if you do, ask to stay. Now, which other school in Ghana will you hear this being taught about today? These are real stuff. You know, she say, you say, still destroys careers. It doesn't matter whether you were found guilty or not. You are smeared. So the world is a very dangerous place. When I sat in David Gergen's class at Harvard, leadership, he said the world is a very dangerous place. I'm not saying it to scare you. I'm saying it to warn you. That's one. That two, you need to trust, but verify. You trust, but verify. Two fundamental things that you need to know. And when you are a leader, you are exposed all the time. Because you cannot tell the difference between the praise singers and the people that are really there for your interest. So, when we talk about call of duty, every one of you here will be called to serve. Whether you are a manager, whether you are even going to primary schools to teach kids how to do mathematics and to read, they are looking at you as a leader. You know, yesterday I was telling Dean Ruth, I said there are statistics that actually shows that students that get free scholarships to go to the university, they never give back to their schools. Think about it, that is profound. People that get the opportunity of free education never give back. Those that suffered and paid are the ones that go back to say, I don't want anybody else to go through what I went through. So in Academic City, can we be different? Can we say that I got this opportunity and maybe my contribution could give somebody else an opportunity? That's the mindset that we should build. And even if you didn't get a free scholarship, you should still know that when you come back here as pioneers of this institution and give back, that you can only make your institution better. Harvard is not Harvard because it has millions of money. Those millions or billions came from alum. Somebody just gave 380 million last year, a Hong Kong businessman. And a building is going to come up and named after him. Another guy, Schwartzman, just gave MIT $1 billion 2 months ago to build an AI center, artificial intelligence. Right? So it is students like you who come back and make your institutions great. That's the reason why I think this class is very important. You can never be too young to learn about leadership, responsibility, accountability, to have moral authority, to respond to a call, to duty. All right? So I'm going to cede the rest of my time to Major Boateng. On that note, I would like to invite Major Daniel Agyenim-Boateng, who is the Acting Director, Financial Management at the General Headquarters at Burma Camp. Thank you for coming.
Let me commence this lecture or presentation by commending the security at the main entrance there. In fact, they did very well this morning when I was coming.
You've never seen a soldier here.
Yes, but they did well. In some places, when you are entering in uniform, they just allow you entry. They said, oh, an officer is coming, then they will open the door for you to go. But this time, it was a different story altogether. But I like it. That is good security measures that they are putting in place for you, and I think it is good in that respect. Okay, let me also say that I'm happy to be part of this seminar and to have the opportunity to speak to you on some of my experiences and challenges as a military officer. By way of introduction, I want to share with you what Field Marshal, this is Montgomery, Bernard Montgomery. He fought in the First and Second World War, and he's not the only person or military officer who has defined leadership. A number of senior military officers and commanders have come out with various definitions of leadership. But I like this definition so much. He is a British military officer, and as I indicated earlier, he fought in both the 2 world wars that the world has ever witnessed. And he is saying that leadership is the capacity and the will to rally men and women to a common purpose and character that inspires confidence. That is what he has to say on leadership. The world has seen various commanders. You can talk of Julius Caesar of Rome. I don't know whether you have read much of him. You can also talk about Napoleon of France, Otto von Bismarck, Germany, Kwame Nkrumah of Ghana, and then Nelson Mandela, our own, in South Africa here. You see, most of these leaders did so well. Most of them, they did so well, but others too did not do well. Those who did not do well ended up brutalizing those that they led, that is their followers. And as a result, their kingdom or their empires failed. But for those that did very well, they left an indelible mark that always speaks volumes of them. My aim within this period is to share with you my engagement with the Ghana Armed Forces with a view to highlighting some experiences and challenges. And then in so doing, I'll cover the following. These are specifics that have been given. So I will follow it. And if at the course of the period you have any other questions outside the scope, you can bring it up and then we will address it. I will touch on, when we talk about a citizen from the perspective of the Ghana Armed Forces. In the Ghana Armed Forces, when you say this person, or if there is a requirement that we want somebody who is a citizen of Ghana, what do we mean? Because you and I know very well that there are various forms of citizenship. So the requirement of the Ghana Armed Forces, we'll look at it. And then I will share with you personally what motivated me to join the Ghana Armed Forces. It's personal, you know, each and every one, each and everyone has whatever it takes or moves him to do what he wants to do. Then I'll touch on a call to duty as a military personnel. Before I move on to that, I want us to look at some few citizenship that we have. We have born within a country. Born within a country. If somebody is giving birth in a country, sometimes, depending on that country, the person automatically becomes a citizen of the country. I think it emerged somewhere in England, where people who were born those days in England became subjects of the monarch. So they were made to serve. They became subjects of the monarch, and they were given citizenship. But as we speak, it's no longer practiced in the UK. And then we talk about citizenship by marriage. Some people, sometimes because they want to be Americans or for whatever reason, they want to identify themselves with a British, they will go and marry a British. And then they will fast track or facilitate his citizenship for him based on the marriage. Also, this is not what we are talking about in the Ghana Armed Forces. And then we can also look at citizenship by investment, economic citizenship. Some people invest so much in countries just to acquire citizenship. They do a lot of investment. They invest in businesses, invest in infrastructure, and a whole lot, ranging from, say, $100,000 to $500,000. I know US, if you have about $500,000 to invest there, your citizenship could be assured in the US. And then again, this is not the kind of citizenship that will enable you to join the Ghana Armed Forces. When we talk about citizenship by birth, that is where either both of your parents or one of your parents are or is a Ghanaian or is a citizen of that state that we are talking about. So now, if I am a Ghanaian, I marry somebody in Ghana who is also a citizen of Ghana, and then we give birth, then we say, this child, wherever we give the birth, whether it is house, room, or whatever, or in Ghana, the person is a citizen of Ghana. You see, first of all, let me say that though it's a personal decision that one takes to join the Ghana Armed Forces, I want to personally believe that there is also an overriding reason or motivation to join the Ghana Armed Forces. And to me, if you don't have that reason, if you are not motivated but by that reason, you cannot fit in well. So personally, I think that the overriding reason is patriotism and sense of duty. Patriotism and sense of duty. What do I mean? You see, one should be willing and ready to serve. You should be ready at all times to defend the sovereignty and the territorial integrity of the state before you can function effectively in the Ghana Armed Forces. For me, let me say that somewhere 2002, I was, and I continue to be, but then I was really a good Christian, you know. And I read somewhere in the Bible, that is John 15:13. He said the greatest love that one can display or one can show is for one to lay his life for his friend. That is the greatest love that you can ever show. How many of us can do that? You see? And if you are not prepared to do it, it means you cannot serve in the Ghana Armed Forces. You get it? Because when people are sleeping, when people are afraid, when people don't know what to do, you should be awake to defend these people. There are other reasons. And no, it's true. You may laugh, but it's true. You know, as a young man coming from, it's not so much of a village, but Sunyani, an area called Mredani, you know, I've not had a lot of experience. And I wasn't also from, let me say, to polish it, I was from a humble home, you know. So I said, okay, I finished school, doing my national service. The national service was even paying more than what I started receiving when I had employment in one of the technical schools, Rima Polytechnic to lecture. So I said, so why wouldn't I leave this service? It's not paying because I was receiving then about 50 Ghana cedi, 2002 thereabout. No, it was old Ghana cedi, so you hear the name so big. And then after service, I went to this institution to help because there was nowhere to go. And they were giving me 30. So I said, no, I have to think of something else. And lo and behold, the opportunity came. And I said, okay, if for nothing at all, I will have the opportunity to travel beyond the boundaries of Ghana for the first time. You see? And you see, it is true because the military has a lot of installations and units outside the country. And these installations are manned by personnel of the Ghana Armed Forces. And then I call it conventional benefits. I call it conventional benefit. I don't know how you want to put it, but it is conventional to me because I also, at that time, knew that when I joined, I will have free medical service for myself and probably in the near future for my spouse and for my children, a free medical service. So these are some of the benefits that I call conventional benefit, because it comes with it. And then job stability. Job stability. Now, if you look out there, there have been a lot of laying off, downsizing here and there. Today, they say these people have been relieved of their duties for various reasons and whatnot. But I knew that in the Ghana Armed Forces, when you joined, the only thing is that you learn, you be selected for training. So when you go for training, you learn your drills and procedures very well, and you are held to all conditions and policies. There's no way the system will eject you. Once you follow your drills, your procedures, you do what is expected of you, you are good to go. You see, it also offers you the opportunity to market or to really take up leadership position outside the military. It prepares you to take up, that's what I wanted to talk about here, prepares you to really take up leadership roles outside the military. You get it? Because the military is basically to develop your discipline level. You understand? To develop your discipline level. And if you have an engagement with the Ghana Armed Forces, it makes you more competitive in the job market. It enriches your CV so that tomorrow, if I'm able to finish my ACCA as I've just started, and I place my qualifications there with somebody who has also done ACCA, I believe that having served as a military officer and having had a lot of experiences in the finance market, I'll be pegged or I'll be placed higher than this person. So these are some of the reasons that personally motivated me, and I believe that it's worth it. Now, let me look at a call to duty as a military personnel. You see, I want to look at it as against where we fall in the society, whether or not we are inclined to one particular political party or government, or we are affiliated in any way to a particular political party or government, or who are we as Ghana Armed Forces. You see, when I talk about Ghana Armed Forces, it's a unified body comprising of the Ghana Army, the Ghana Navy, and then the Ghana Air Force. You see, and the Ghana Armed Forces has an expanded role. And the role one is to protect the territorial integrity of the state Ghana against foreign aggression, and then also to assist the civil authority to maintain law and order in the country. That is not all. We also participate in peacekeeping missions all over. We can talk about UN missions, we are talking about Africa Union missions, and then the sub-regional missions. That is the one we have in Gambia, like this is a sub-regional mission with ECOWAS Commission managing it. Another role is also to assist the civil authority to provide humanitarian assistance during periods of emergencies and national disasters. And then we also assist in developmental projects with our engineer battalion. So if you look at the expanded role, you will realize that we exist to defend the Constitution. We exist to protect the territories of Ghana. So that is to say that whichever government that comes to power, we are prepared to work with that government. As our lecturer said, he said the president is our commander-in-chief. So when a president is elected, then we say that automatically he becomes the commander-in-chief. And the Ghana Armed Forces is a subject to the commander. So you are subordinate to the commander. You help the commander to succeed, whichever, devoid of whatever political affiliation that you happen to find or come from. Once they said this person has emerged the winner in the elections and that going forward he's the president of Ghana, then hold allegiance to that person. Your loyalty and everything should be given to that person. That is the role, or that is our duty. That is what we have been called to do as military personnel. The next thing that I want to look at here, I say my call of duty in relation to leadership. My call of duty, I'm trying to make it personal, because in the Ghana Armed Forces, we have specializations. And based on where you belong, your work description is different. Based on what you belong, what you do is different. For instance, I'm coming from the International Peace Support Operations. International Peace Support Operations from GHQ Bema Camp. What happens there is that all the missions that we have outside Ghana, we advise the leadership of the Ghana Armed Forces on all matters relating to finance. So you have to be able to write a lot of correspondence to New York, you write correspondence to Ministry of Defense. You advise the CDS on all financial issues pertaining to our mission areas outside. That's what we do. So in this capacity, you realize that one should demonstrate a lot of leadership qualities. You should be able to display a lot of knowledge. And don't forget, somebody said this. He said that knowledge is not from age. I hope you side with the person. It is you just wanting to acquire it. It's not about age. So don't please sit here and think that when you are maybe 40 years, automatically you'll be knowledgeable than you are today. No. You have to seek for it and you get it. So as one of leadership qualities, it's required of you to demonstrate a lot of knowledge on your field of work. Depending, as I said, depending on the role that you are playing, there are a number of people that are also in a different realm, a different category. So they are, so to say, operations and how they go about their things might be different, might be entirely different. Let me emphasize that within the army, we have the infantry chaps. The infantry chaps, we call them the teeth arm. See, they are the teeth arm because they really fight the battle on the ground. You get it? They are involved in close quarter battle. Close quarter, because the weapon range is too short. Too short. So they can't engage the enemy from too far. So close quarter battle, they fight it. Then we have the artillery with the big weapons who fight a deep battle. Deep battle. So before the infantry guys will get there, the arty officers or the soldiers have already softened the ground to distract the, so to say, the aggressors or the enemies. So depending on where you happen to find yourself, then you should know that there is the need to really exhibit some form of leadership qualities. You get it? Now, I think this is where I'll briefly share with you some experiences that I've had in my service with the Ghana Armed Forces. I commissioned into the Ghana Armed Forces 2005, September, after 2 years training from the academy. So I came out as a lieutenant, Agyenim-Boateng, posted to the finance corps. But by then, I have my first degree in finance. So, because the finance corps is not a teeth arm, so to say, I had to go to a teeth arm and do my regimental duties. So I went to 4th Infantry Battalion in Kumasi for my regimental duties. But what I want to share with you is my engagement with UN peacekeeping missions. I've had 7 tours with the UN, but with all this, where I really had a lot of experience was when I served as a MILOP. If I say a MILOP, I'm talking about a military observer in Darfur, Sudan, not South Sudan. You know, we have Sudan and we have South Sudan. So I served 2012 in Darfur, Sudan. Some of us were not, I wouldn't say too lucky, but the deployment where some of us were deployed were not too safe. You get it? We're deployed in some town called Furubaranga. Furubaranga was a very small town and shares border with Chad. And these are where the rebels, the Janjaweed, these are where they operate. See? So initially, I said I want to have experience in traveling, but this one is becoming a problem. But just as I said, you have sworn an oath of secrecy. So you cannot say you will not go. And if you're a very serious officer, before you are deployed, your launch in the mission area, you should be able to find out more about the mission. So, I don't know, but those of you who monitored the mission at that time, 2012, there were a lot of incidences and incursions there. Skirmishes all over in Darfur those times. We went to Furubaranga. as a military observer, what you do is, military observers, you don't carry weapons. You work in uniforms, but you don't carry weapon. What your protection is there's a force, a protection force. In our case, they were Burkinabes. They are battalions operating. So because the security is not so safe, you go and stay in the position of the battalion. They have a lot of equipment, arms and ammunition. So you stay with them, and then they serve as your protection. Anytime you are going out for patrols, you happen to position your vehicle in between them. Then they will van you, you will have advanced party, you have the real party, you have some by your side, and then you move. Because the vehicle you are using is a light plated vehicle. It's a Prado. You are cruising in a Prado. And these guys are also coming, or the protection force, they are in armor plated. See, their vehicles are solid. But you can also say that you want to park your vehicle and go and sit in theirs. No. So that is the procedure. So you go with them. They are really fortified per the vehicles they use and all that. You go with them, you report whatever you see. There were a number of times that South Africa battalion, Senegalese battalion, and then Zambia, they were ambushed. If I talk about ambushed, I believe you understand. They were ambushed. There was a force lying in wait, launching a surprise attack on them at close range. And you can imagine what happens. So when it happens like that, the next day, if it's your turn to go on duty, you begin to think. One day, we went. It was all over in the news. I don't know whether you heard it. We're on patrols. We call something in Darfur wadis. And the wadis are the river beds. See, when it rains, it cuts the ground and form the river, the path that the river runs through. And they are all over, according to wadis. There was this, we're going, as I said, with Burkinabe Defense Force. There was this wadi that virtually there was nothing inside. So we drove through the wadis and then we left. When we're coming back, surprisingly, there was water in the wadi, but the leading vehicle felt that, it's not too deep, so you'll be able to cross. Surprisingly, we're all following. Surprisingly, the car entered, and then it started sinking. You could see that the car is sinking, but you can't do anything. It was in the news. You can Google and check Burkinabe force in the flooding in the Darfur, 2012. You can't do anything. What happened was that the people, some of them started getting up to stand, because it was just sinking. So they wanted to stand on top of the vehicle, thinking that the water level may not get there. Before we realized the thing somersaulted like this. And it took, I think, 1 month or so before we were able to find some bodies. The 5 of them in that vehicle were all wiped off. And you can't also cross. And if you want to detour, you don't also know the area so well and the position of these Janjawis or rebels. So it's not, you can't use any unapproved route. There are some routes that are designated for you to go on patrols. You can't use any route. So what do? You have to stay there and stay and just wait till such a time that you yourself, you think that, no, this road is smooth travel before you go. The worst of the failure was when one day we went, you see, let me tell you something in the military. When the force facing you is overwhelming, it's too strong, you don't fight back. You don't fight back. When the force is so overwhelming, in UN operations, let me put it that way, in UN operations, not in all operations, in UN operations, when you realize that the force is so overwhelming that you cannot really extricate yourself, you don't engage them in battle. We're moving, and before we realized, we have been encircled, the whole place. Our luck was that this time it was not an ambush. We were encircled like this, all over, circle. Then someone emerged from the top of a vehicle and said, you either surrender or you are wiped off. That was a major loss to the UN. They took virtually everything and left us with some few vehicles that we can just manage home. And these are some of the things that happen in UN missions. The UN, people say it's a big elephant, but sometimes they lose so much in mission areas. Because when it happens like that, you cannot fight back. The only thing, and they will tell you, their orientation, they are training for you when you get there. So they will tell you what to do at any point in time. But if that decision wasn't perfect, then the UN would have relieved us of our duties. And then what the Ghana Armed Forces doesn't want to hear is non-performance outside. If you go and you don't perform, then you are relieved of your duties as well, you die in there, because obviously when you come, the system will relieve you. You get it? It will relieve you. So these are some of the few experiences. I'll try and wrap up so that if you have any questions outside what I've spoken about, you can bring it up and then we look at it. Over the period, these are a few lessons that I have learned. That as a leader, you have to exercise, or you have to really be humble in your dealings. There is this general who said that the moment your subordinates stop coming to you, it means you have lost your position as a leader. You continue to be a commander, but you have lost your stance as a leader when your subordinates stop coming to you. And then you have to be courageous in your dealings with your subordinate, because you have to lead so as to inspire, demonstrate confidence, to motivate them. You should not be seen behind. Irrespective of the situation, you should be always be seen leading. Leading does not mean go and be in the front. You maintain a tactical bound between your forward troops, yourself and your rear troops, so that you demonstrate a lot of confidence just to motivate your followers to follow you. See, you have to be loyal. In the military, what drives a lot is loyalty. What really pertains a lot in the Ghana Armed Forces is loyalty. Because if you are not loyal to your commanders and subordinates, it means you cannot function well. You cannot function well. And it is dangerous when you are not loyal to your subordinate. Because it means that in peacetime, you think that everything is okay. But in wartime, you will not have the trust in you. You will not be able to think that you can lead him to win the battle. And what happens? What happens? Who can tell me? Think I'll draw the curtain here, and then I will expect that if you have.
So my question is, can there be a case where the military will be released to the communities to help maintain the order? Because it looks like civilians fear the military more than the policemen.
You see, first of all, what you should know is that the responsibility of maintaining law and order in the country is in the arms of the police. Okay, I indicated earlier clearly that our core mandate is to protect the nation against external forces, external aggressions. You indicated that it's a peacetime, so there is no aggression here and there. But not until the police tells you to come in, you cannot go. You get it? It's a decision of the state and the police. So when the police are overwhelmed, when the police believe that it has gotten to such a state that they can no longer function effectively, then they will request the assistance of the military. But it is not our duty to wake up and say that, oh, there's indiscipline all over, and that we have to take the job of the police and start doing it. Okay? You have to be called to come and do it. Okay? And it's the state, so it's the government, the police, everybody should be ready and saying that no, things are out of hand. The police are off guard. They cannot control, maintain peace and security. Let's call in the military to come and help. You get it?
So in the military, you have your direct commander and then your next commander. Who is your loyalty to? If, for example, you said you're in finance and you have to pay some money, you know by your conscience that this money doesn't have to go this way. And your direct commander says, let it go here. And then your higher commander knows about it and says, don't do it. Who does your loyalty go to at this time?
Let me tell you something. In the military, there's nothing like your higher commander disagrees with your lower commander. There's nothing like that. You, the lower commander, whether you disagree or not, you should not show it. You see, the point is that whatever it is, you should find a common grounds to solve it. It will not happen that, just as the scenario you painted, that my 2-up, if I put it, my 2-up is saying I should do it, my 1-up says I should do that. It doesn't happen like that. The soldier is not the civil institution where maybe departmental leaders can be fighting with their... no. It doesn't happen. Once the commander says, this is the way to go, if you have any reservation, you go to him and says that, sir, I think that if we are able to look at it this way or the other way, it will help. Sometimes he will say, okay, I'll come back to you on it. At times, he will say, no, this is the way to go, let's do it. You get it? It ends there. It ends there. You see, but let me also tell you that there's what we call lawful command and unlawful command. Okay? There are lawful commands and unlawful command. If you think that the command is unlawful, you cannot say you will not do it. You go to him and tell him these are your concerns. If he insists, then you put in your grievance. You put it in writing to say your 2-up. You get it. Then you pass through the channel. But you will do it. No, you will do it. But you have registered your position already. You understand? You will do it. As for the job, you will do it. Yes, I say do before complain. You will do it. Then now, whatever grievance you have, you put it in and to go to the mail. So that if tomorrow there's a comeback, then your position will be established that as for you, this is what you advised, but then this is what the final authority said, and that's what you did. You get it?
As you can see, these students are very we do appreciate you making time to come. We have a little token of appreciation here. So ladies and gentlemen, let's give the major